My name is Arthur Blackwood. I'm 61 years old, and for 35 years I was the chief systems architect at Veridian Corporation, a technology manufacturing company in Silicon Valley. When I started there, the company had just 12 employees and a server that fit under a desk. I watched that company grow to become one of the West Coast's leading electronic component suppliers. For 3.5 decades, I built Veridian's IT infrastructure from the ground up. Every line of code, every security protocol, every automatic backup passed through my supervision. It wasn't just work for me, it was my masterpiece. Other employees called me the man who never sleeps, because I was always available when something went wrong. Weekends, holidays, late nights. If the system needed me, I was there. Richard Sterling, the founder and CEO, always treated me with respect. He understood that his company depended as much on my expertise as on his sales. For years, we worked side by side, expanding not only the business but also the technological capability that underpinned everything. I wasn't just an employee. I was a silent partner, the guardian of the company's digital backbone. But things changed when Sophia Sterling, Richard's daughter, returned from Harvard with her newly earned MBA. At 30, she had grand ideas about modernization and digital disruption. The problem wasn't the ideas. The problem was her complete lack of understanding of how things actually worked. During her first few months at the company, I tried to be patient. I answered her questions about our systems architecture, explained the processes we had developed over the years, but I realized she wasn't interested in learning. She was interested in changing everything to prove her worth. The situation became more tense when she brought Liam Walsh, her boyfriend, to evaluate our systems. Liam was 28 and had a postgraduate degree in artificial intelligence. Impressive on paper, but when he started asking questions about our infrastructure, it became clear that his experience was purely theoretical. He talked about machine learning and neural networks, but didn't understand basic concepts of legacy systems. Last September, Richard traveled to an international technology fair in Germany. It would be a 3-week trip. Sophia saw this as her opportunity to show leadership. In the second week of Richard's absence, she scheduled a meeting with me. I walked into the conference room expecting another discussion about security protocols. Instead, I found Sophia sitting at the head of the table with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Liam was beside her, furiously typing on his laptop. "Arthur," she said, "you're part of the past. Liam understands artificial intelligence. We're going to truly modernize this place. Your services are no longer needed." For a moment, I felt as if the air had been sucked out of the room. 35 years, more than 3 decades of my life dedicated to that company, and she was dismissing me as if I were obsolete equipment. But my voice remained calm. "Of course," I replied. "Just give me 5 days to make the complete technical transition. Everything's documented, as always." Sophia had that arrogant smile of someone who thought she had just made the smartest career move. Liam kept typing, probably preparing some report on how they were going to revolutionize Viridian's IT. I watched them for a few seconds, processing not only what had just happened, but also what it meant for the company's future. 5 days is more than enough, Sophia said, flipping through some papers on the table. Liam already has a plan to implement AI solutions that will increase our efficiency by at least 40%. She spoke as if reading from a business manual, using jargon that sounded impressive but meant nothing concrete. Liam finally looked up from his laptop. "Arthur, no offense, but you guys are using 90s technology. We need cloud computing, machine learning, complete automation. It's 2024, man." He said this with the condescension typical of someone who confuses innovation with wisdom. During the next 5 days, I did exactly what I promised. I organized all the technical manuals, updated system documentation, prepared spreadsheets with all passwords and access codes. I recorded over 8 hours of explanatory videos detailing every critical process. I created full backups of all databases and operating systems. I left everything so organized that even a novice could follow the procedures. But while I organized this transition, I also did something Sophia and Liam didn't expect. I carefully reviewed all the contracts and legal documents I had signed over the years. In 2011, when Viridian underwent a major expansion, Richard Sterling and I formalized an agreement that protected my intellectual property. The main system I developed, including the optimization algorithms and custom security protocols, was registered in my name, with a lifetime use license for Viridian Corporation. The condition was simple. The company could use the system indefinitely, but any critical alteration to the core architecture had to be consulted with me. It wasn't just legal protection. It was recognition of the fact that I wasn't replaceable in the way Sophia imagined. These documents were stored in a safe at Wells Fargo, along with backups of all the original source code. I also did something more subtle. Over the years, I had established a direct communication channel with Richard Sterling for monthly reports on system health. Before leaving, I sent my last detailed report, including performance metrics, ongoing projects, and a complete technical assessment of the company's situation. Richard would receive this in his personal email, even while in Germany. On my last Friday, I tidied my desk, handed over my badge and keys to Sophia. She was radiant, convinced she had made the right choice. "I'm sure you'll find something suitable for your age," she said, trying to sound sympathetic. Liam was by her side, carrying a box full of new equipment he had ordered. "Good luck," I replied, shaking both their hands. Inside, I knew exactly what was coming. The first week after my departure was silent. I received a few calls from old colleagues asking if it was true that I had been fired. I politely confirmed and said I was taking some time to reflect on my next steps. In reality, I was waiting. In the second week, the first signs of trouble began. Jenny Morrison from accounting called me worried. "Arthur, The financial system is showing some strange errors. Liam said it's normal during the cloud migration, but the billing reports aren't matching up. I listened carefully, but only told her she should speak directly with the new management. 2 days later, it was Marcus Chen from the production department. Orders are duplicating in the system, Arthur. Yesterday, we sent the same product 3 times to the same client. Liam tried to fix it, but he made it worse. Now, we can't access the delivery history. Again, I kept my response professional and neutral. In the 3rd week, chaos was spreading. Sarah Williams from sales contacted me almost desperate. Arthur, we lost 2 important contracts because the CRM system stopped syncing with the main database. The Boeing client canceled a $2.3 million order because we couldn't confirm the delivery deadline. Sophia's blaming temporary bugs, but this doesn't look temporary. I could feel the frustration in Sarah's voice, but all I said was, I'm sure they'll sort it out. Liam has a lot of experience with modern technology. Inside, I knew the system was collapsing exactly as I had predicted. What Liam didn't understand is that our infrastructure wasn't just 90s technology. It was a highly customized hybrid system, developed over decades to meet Viridian's specific needs. Each module was interconnected in ways that didn't appear in the superficial documentation. It was like trying to fix a Swiss watch with carpentry tools. In the 4th week, Richard Sterling returned from Germany. He had secured 3 important new contracts at the technology fair, including a $15 million deal with a German automotive company. He was excited to implement the necessary expansions to meet the new demand. That's when he discovered his company was falling apart. The first sign of trouble came when Richard tried to access the month's financial reports. The system crashed 3 times in a row. When he finally got in, the numbers made no sense. Revenues were duplicated, expenses appeared in the wrong categories, and the cash flow showed an impossible deficit of $2 million. Richard immediately called Sophia. "What the hell is going on with our systems?" he asked, trying to keep his composure. Sophia tried to minimize. "Dad, these are just temporary adjustments. Liam is modernizing everything. In a few weeks, we'll have the most efficient company in Silicon Valley." But Richard wasn't a man to accept vague excuses. He had built Viridian with discipline and attention to detail. The next morning, he called a meeting with all department heads to understand the extent of the problems. What he discovered was devastating. Jenny Morrison from accounting reported that she couldn't close the month's books because the financial system was generating contradictory reports. Marcus Chen from production explained that 3 large orders had been incorrectly sent, resulting in $800,000 in returns and complaints. Sarah Williams from sales reported that the CRM system had lost the contact history of over 200 important clients. "And where's Arthur?" Richard asked, noting the absence of the man who was always present at critical meetings. Sophia swallowed hard. "Dad, I made the decision to modernize our IT team. Arthur was part of the past. Liam brought artificial intelligence solutions that... You fired Arthur? Richard interrupted, his voice rising a notch. Arthur Blackwood, the man who built our entire technological infrastructure? It was necessary, Sophia defended herself. His system was obsolete. Liam implemented cloud computing, machine learning. Richard looked at Liam, who was pale at the end of the table. Young man, explain to me how you intend to fix this. Liam tried to sound confident. Mr. Sterling, these are temporary migration issues. We're implementing a completely new architecture based on microservices and... Stop, Richard said. I don't want jargon. I want to know when my company will be back to normal. A few weeks, Liam mumbled. Maybe a month. Richard was silent for several seconds, processing the situation. Then he turned back to his daughter. Sophia, I want all the IT transition documents on my desk in 1 hour. I want to know exactly what Arthur handed over and what you did with that information. When Richard analyzed the documentation I had prepared, he was impressed by the level of detail. Everything was perfectly organized, with step-by-step manuals, explanatory videos, and complete backups. Any competent professional could follow those instructions. The problem wasn't a lack of information. It was a lack of competence to interpret it. It was then that he remembered my last monthly report, which he had received by email while in Germany. He had skimmed it at the time, but now decided to review it carefully. The report showed that all systems were functioning perfectly before my departure, with 99.7% uptime and 0 critical issues. But it was at the end of the document that Richard found the most important information. A discreet note mentioned the 2011 intellectual property registrations and the need for consultation for critical changes to the main systems. Richard immediately went to his office and called his lawyer, Patricia Reynolds. Pat, I need you to check some intellectual property contracts from 2011. They're agreements I made with Arthur Blackwood about our IT systems. 2 hours later, Patricia called back. Richard, do you remember those contracts? Arthur has legal rights to Viridian's core system. Any significant modification should have been approved by him. Technically, your daughter violated the agreement by firing him and changing the systems without consultation. Richard felt a mix of frustration and admiration. Frustration at the situation his company was in, and admiration for Arthur's foresight. While Sophia thought she was being clever, Arthur had legally protected himself years earlier, anticipating exactly this type of situation. That afternoon, Richard called my personal number. I was in my backyard, gardening, when the phone rang. Arthur, Richard said, I need to talk to you. Of course, Richard, I replied calmly. How was your trip? Let's put the trip aside. My company is falling apart, and I just found out my daughter committed not only a technical error, but also a legal violation by firing you. I paused before replying. I understand your concern. Arthur, I know you have every right to sue me. I know you could destroy Viridian if you wanted to, but I'm asking for your help. The company we built together is in danger. I could hear the sincerity in Richard's voice. It wasn't just concern for the business. It was the recognition that he had lost control of the situation and needed the man he should have protected from the beginning. Richard, I said, I will help Viridian, but this time the conditions will be different. The next day I met Richard in his office. He looked like he had aged 5 years in a week. There were piles of problem reports on his desk, and the phone wouldn't stop ringing with client complaints. Sophia was sitting in a chair in the corner, her eyes red from crying. Liam hadn't even shown up for the meeting. "Arthur," Richard said, standing up to greet me. "Thank you for coming." I sat in the chair across from his desk, the same one I had sat in thousands of times over 3 decades. Before we talk about solutions, I need to understand exactly what was done to the systems. Richard handed me a folder with technical reports Liam had prepared. As I analyzed the documents, I could see the extent of the disaster. Liam had tried to migrate the main database to a cloud computing platform without understanding the dependencies between systems. He had removed security protocols he considered redundant. More seriously, he had altered the relationship tables in the database, breaking connections that had taken years to establish. "Where's Liam now?" I asked. Sophia finally spoke, her voice choked. He said he needed to consult some experts. He hasn't shown up for 2 days. I mentally translated. Liam had abandoned ship when he realized he couldn't fix what he had broken. It was typical of inexperienced consultants. They created complex problems and then disappeared when it was time to take responsibility. "Richard," I said, closing the folder, "the good news is that everything can be fixed. I have complete backups of all systems from before the disastrous migration. The bad news is that it will take at least 2 weeks of intensive work to restore everything. How much do you want?" Richard asked directly. "It's not about money," I replied. "It's about structure. If I come back, it will be as senior IT consultant reporting directly to you. Salary of $180,000 annually plus profit sharing. And no technical decision will be made without my final approval." Richard didn't hesitate. "Accepted." Sophia tried to protest. "Dad, this is—" "Sophia," Richard interrupted firmly, "you caused this problem. Now you'll be quiet while Arthur solves it." In the following days, I worked practically non-stop. First, I halted all the improvements Liam had implemented. I disconnected the systems from the cloud and restored our local servers. I executed the backups I had prepared before leaving, recovering all the data that had been corrupted during the poorly planned migration. But I wasn't working alone. Jennifer Martinez, a junior analyst on the IT team who had been overlooked by Liam, proved to be extremely competent. She had discreetly documented all the problems that arose after my departure, creating a detailed record of the errors. "Mr. Blackwood," she said, "I knew something was wrong. The system worked perfectly with you here." During the second week of work, Richard called me for a private conversation. "Arthur, I need to know what you intend to do about the legal situation. My lawyer told me you have rights to our core systems." "Richard," I replied, "for 35 years I never used those rights against the company. I'm not going to start now. But I want you to understand one thing. I created these legal protections not to harm Viridian, but to protect it from impulsive decisions like the one Sophia made." Richard nodded slowly. "You were right, and I should have protected you better." "The past is the past," I said. "Let's focus on the future." 2 weeks and 3 days after my return, all systems were functioning normally. I not only restored the original functionalities, but also implemented some improvements I had planned before the crisis. I added security redundancies, optimized some processes, and created a real-time monitoring system that alerted about any anomaly. The result was impressive. Operational efficiency increased 23% compared to the period before the crisis. The clients we had lost began to return when they saw that their orders were being processed correctly again. The $15 million contract with the German company was saved, and Richard managed to negotiate an extension that increased the value to $18 million. During this period, Sophia was reallocated to the Human Resources Department, far from any technical or strategic decisions. Richard was clear. She would need to prove her competence in a less critical area before taking on greater responsibilities again. As for Liam, he simply disappeared. I later learned that he tried to get jobs at other tech companies, but his reputation had already spread throughout Silicon Valley. A month after my return, Richard organized a meeting with the entire team to officially announce my new position. "Arthur Blackwood is our new Vice President of Technology," he said. "All decisions related to IT infrastructure will go through him." After the meeting, Jennifer Martinez approached me. "Mr. Blackwood, can I ask you a question? Why did you come back? After what they did to you, I wouldn't have come back." I thought for a moment before replying. "Jennifer, Viridian isn't just a company to me. It's my life's work. I wasn't going to let incompetence and arrogance destroy what took us decades to build." 3 months later, I implemented a mentorship program for young IT professionals. Jennifer was the first participant. I created clear protocols for changes in critical systems, ensuring that situations like the one we experienced would never happen again. I also established a technical council with senior employees from different departments, creating a system of checks and balances for important decisions. Sophia tried to approach me a few times, probably trying to rebuild bridges. I was always polite, but professional. There was no resentment on my part, but there was also no trust. She had shown her true character when she had power, and that's not easily forgotten. At the end of the year, Viridian had its best financial results in 5 years. Richard offered me company shares, officially recognizing that I was more than an employee. I was a fundamental pillar of the organization. Today, at 62, I continue working at Veridian, but now on my own terms. I have a respectful and competent team, perfectly functioning systems, and the recognition I always deserved. Sophia learned a valuable lesson about humility and competence. She still works at the company, but now understands that experience and knowledge cannot be replaced by arrogance and titles. The story taught me that patience and preparation always triumph over impulse and arrogance. When you build something with integrity and competence, that work protects itself. And sometimes the best revenge is simply to show your worth when others realize they can't live without you. If you enjoyed this story of how experience and preparation triumphed over arrogance, please like this video. Share it with someone who needs to hear that experience has value. Subscribe to the channel for more real stories of people who knew how to bounce back. And leave a comment. Have you ever been in a situation where your experience was underestimated? How did you deal with it? I'm eager to read your stories.